This is FIDE Master Viktor Neustroyev, and thank you for joining our webinar. We didn't have webinars for many weeks. And today we are going to discuss how to compensate the material losses with pieces activity. That's why the webinar is called Pieces activity versus material advantage. In other words, I'm going to demonstrate a few examples of how you can convert your positional advantage, how you can convert your pieces activity and win the game being even some material down. So can you please let me know if the sound and video quality is good? And I'm checking everything, so I'm streaming it on several websites. I mean, on YouTube, on our ChessLance website, as well as on my Twitch account and on my YouTube account. And also there are some streams on Facebook. So I wanna know if the sound and video quality is good, because I didn't connect my microphone when I started the stream. Now it's connected, so I wanna make sure that it works. Okay, thanks. If everything works, perfect. Let's wait for more people to join us. And while we are waiting for them, I want to let you know that we are going to conduct another tournament on the 11th of June. It will be a blitz tournament on chess.com, and as usual, 3 winners get money prizes. First 5 winners will get a lesson with a FIDE master. It's either one of our FIDE masters. Let me show you. So it's either FIDE master Nikolai Yordanov, this guy, or FIDE master Armin Musovic. Okay, so today, as I told you, we are going to talk about as for the lessons, if you are going to take a class with one of our coaches, FIDE master Nikolai Yordanov, Armin Musovic, maybe international master David Fitzsimons, or Boralyub Zlatanovic, you can book it on our website. If you are looking for a class with me, I actually don't have a lot of time slots available, but you can message me on tricksofchess@gmail.com, and I'll try to find some slots for you. Yeah, so message me at tricksofchess@gmail.com, and you can also message me at school@chesslance.com. Any questions related to ChessLance? Okay, fine. So we are going to talk about pieces activity. Well, first of all, pieces activity. Take a look at the position. You may consider the move that white played. It was actually Steinitz playing with white pieces. So think about this position and suggest your candidate moves. And while you are thinking, I will tell you something. When we talk about pieces activity, we have in mind several areas the piece can move to. And actually, it's countable. So people, it's countable. Let's say our queen on e2, it can go to these, that squares. Well, maybe, this, that, this, that. And everywhere the queen can move successfully without being captured should be calculated. I mean, you can sum the number of squares, and this is how you evaluate the mobility of your queen. So the mobility of your pieces is important, but not the most important factor. The second factor is pieces coordination. It's not enough just to have a few pieces active. You will actually see an example where I demonstrated when some of pieces are active, they are located on active positions, but the coordination among pieces is really poor, and that's why that player, or you, if you have no coordination with your pieces, struggle with coming up with a combination or a plan that improves his position. And so there is no point to keep the pieces active if there is no coordination. You just cannot use them, and you cannot take advantage of their activity. So two important factors: mobility and coordination. Okay, I'll do one more thing and we'll start with this example. Okay, Richard, let me check. Yes, I've got your message. Thank you. I will answer later, because after this webinar I have two more classes, and after I finish them I will answer. Okay. Okay, so which move do you suggest in this position? This is the first question. And if speaking about material and mobility and coordination, so of course you have to keep balance, which I try to keep. Yes, I like extra material. I am quite greedy, but at the same time you should compare how much material you get and how you can be punished for that material you captured. That's why you should always compare whether your opponent has enough material to develop his initiative and punish you or not. And we are going to talk about it a little bit later in our next examples. Okay, I of course suggest everyone to stay at this event and suggest them. So I'm waiting for your moves, guys. Let me check what other people say on. So e4, e5, which probably means d5 move. Okay. Black will always play g6 to block the knight. What's the point? Are you? Well, yes, we are on the same position. d5 and knight d4. Paul is absolutely correct. So d5 is a sacrifice. Here, Stanitz realized that actually his knight on f5. What now? Well, of course, black can ignore this move. They cannot castle because in such a case they lose on e7, but they can play this move. However, it leads to trouble, because after d takes e6, well, this move means the pawn is a weakness. Also, knight d4 can be played, because if they take, it's queen e7, which is quite dangerous. So knight has to take to stop all this stuff. Then rook cd1, and the queen is about to come to e6, which is really dangerous. That's why the black queen has to stop it with queen f5 move. However, knight h4, well, the queen has to keep an eye on this square. That's why queen c8, and then queen c4. King goes to f8, what means that this rook cannot join the game. But problem, unfortunately for black, and this is where I think we should stop the analysis. And it's obvious that black cannot ignore the d5 move, and instead of king f7 they have to take it. They have to take this pawn. Well, I'm sure it's obvious that the knight is pinned. So the knight cannot take, and if the queen takes, it's a mate on e7. So c takes d5, knight to d4, and the knight becomes really active. It becomes more mobile. By sacrificing the pawn, white improved the position of the knight a lot and also threatens with such moves like knight f5. For example, I just play a weird move and knight f5 wins the game. So that's why king f7 to unpin. But then the knight enters the e6, threatening with this rook c7. So this extra pawn is useless. Of course, it's an extra pawn, and when the game comes to the end game, that can be the most decisive factor, and because of that, black can win. But we have a middle game, and the white knight entering the enemy camp, letting these two pieces, the rook and the knight, to get coordinated, and rook c7 to be played. Then rook hc8 to stop rook c7, and queen g4, threatening with queen g7 as well as knight g5. So g6 in order to stop queen g7, knight g5, which is a discovered attack. That's why the king has to move to e8 and defend the queen to not lose the queen. What do you think white should do in this position? Okay, Daniel suggests rook c8. Daniel, can you please explain what's the purpose of rook c8? And Paul suggests rook takes e7. Okay, so well, rook c8 right now doesn't make much sense. This move looks like attractive options because after queen g4 it's knight f6. And the queen is gained back. However, in this endgame, white is only one pawn up, which is not enough. A better move here is rook e7. So this is how white converts their activity into something concrete, into a tactical strike, which allows them to win the game. Well, if queen takes, it's easy. Just rook c8, rook takes rook, queen takes. Then after queen d8, we can exchange, or we can continue with this move. So it's a winning endgame with no doubts. If king takes e7, then it's rook e1. Well, now the king has two options, to go there or there. For example, king d6, or maybe king d8 is a simpler option. But king d8, then it's knight e6, which forces the king to go to the e file, after which the king falls under a discovery check and the queen on d7 is lost. So that's why let's talk about king d6 instead. The king goes to d6, then queen b4. What now? If the king goes to c7, it's knight e6 and queen. I can show you. If the king goes to c7, it's check. The king now goes there, check, they block, you take, and after queen takes, rook e8 is a mate. So that's why the only logical move is rook c5. But even this move loses the game because you can continue. Well, first of all, you can continue with knight e6, with rook e6. And then they have to sacrifice the queen, which is absolutely losing because their rook on c5 falls as well. Or you can play this check and then rook e6. And it leads to the checkmate, or something very close to a checkmate. b4, take, and then it's a deadly attack. So that's why they cannot take on e7, and instead of taking on e7, black played king f8 move. What's the point of this move? It's actually quite a clever move, because this rook on c1 is always hanging with a mate, and rook takes c8 doesn't really improve anything because rook c1 is still a mate, the other rook, I mean. Well, in this position, if you take the queen, you get checkmated. So everything is hanging. So all our pieces are hanging, but white, Stanis, finds the best way. What do you think he plays? Okay, double the rooks. What do you mean? How to double the rook? Rook c1, but the queen is hanging. Knight e6 check. Well, this time I think knight e6 won't work because of king takes e7. Yeah, so it's rook f7 check. Why? Because queen f7 still faces with rook c8. And king e8 faces with queen d7. So that's why king g8. However, white continues with another check. If king takes, queen d7 is a check, and this is how white avoids a checkmate. So king h8 was played in the game, another check, and after that, rook g7, and this is where black resigned. Why? If they play this move, it's just queen h4. And after that, no, wait, check, take, you cannot take. Okay, there, they go there. Then another check on h8, king e7, queen g7. And if the king goes there, it's rook e1 move. And if the king goes there, it's queen f6. Now the king has no squares to escape. Well, if he does that, you can play rook e1, but maybe queen g8 is a better move. Queen f7, he goes there, and queen f8. And after that, it's just knight f7, king d7, and queen d6 mate. Well, it's not so hard to calculate, but you don't really need to calculate it. It's obvious that queen h4 with queen h7, it leads to a strong attack, and you win the game because of that. Okay, so this example shows us how important it is to activate our pieces. Right now, white has no prospects for their knight. They have some pressure there, but they cannot realize it because of all these threats. Well, no. Castle queen side. This is the move. For queen c4, it's castle queen side, and this is how black solves their problems. If not queen c4, if something else, king f7 solves the problem. So Stanis finds the best way of activating his knight and pressuring on through this file. The next fragment I would like to demonstrate is the game played in 2018 by Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen, and I'm only going to demonstrate a fragment. Here Carlsen is playing with black pieces. White wants to capture on c5 with their knight. What do you think black should do in this position? So I'm looking for your comments. b6. Well, b6 makes sense. This is not a move that loses. Well, this is a possible move, but if you play b6, don't you think your bishop is really bad? King e7 in order to defend both pawns. That makes sense as well. Bishop a7 was considered by Javier, which is actually the best move according to the engine. Magnus played another move, which is also good, but bishop a7 sacrificing on d6. Why it's so important to activate pieces? Well, because with activating this bishop, you also allow your rook to get to the place of action, to the e file probably, here, to the e8, or maybe to d8 if the pawn is taken. Here, Magnus plays king g7. The pawn is not hanging on d6, but the pawn on c5 is hanging after the exchange. And then Magnus plays bishop a7 attacking the rook. Rook goes to c3 and rook h5. This is how he's activating his pieces. Rook d3, rook e5, and now all his pieces are playing in this game, and white is likely to lose the pawn. However, white is also likely to face with some problems. For example, d6, rook a e8, you are threatening to deliver a checkmate by taking the knight, so let's say rook d1. But after rook a2, it's a real trouble because rook f2 is coming, after which the rook will deliver a discovered attack. So let's say d7, check, king g1, and then rook f3, which is a mate. Rook d4, bishop takes d4, this is a mate. So knight has to stay there to control the f2. So either rook d8 or rook a6, and then the d6 pawn dies. Okay. So in the game, instead of d6, okay, this is where actually I don't know what happened. I just wanted you to illustrate this opportunity that it makes sense to sacrifice some of the pawns but activate your pieces. So d6 was lost, was removed, and then both these pieces could participate the game while the rook on h1 couldn't, at least for a few more moves. The next example. This is an example. I don't know who was playing this game, but could you please tell me which plan would you follow with white pieces here? It's white to move. What would you do? So guys, I'm waiting for your suggestions. Which plan white should follow? The position is approximately equal. Maybe white is just a little bit better. Mm-hmm. What? Knight is hanging? Or you mean king is hanging? What does it mean? The king is weak? Yes, this king is weak, and maybe we can base our plan on it. Ah, so you thought that's this move? No, that's not a weak back rank. It's enough defenders on d8. Okay, so there are several suggestions. H4, H5, try a kingside attack, which is unlikely to succeed because the knight is already there. They can also play bishop g4 every time, or they can play h5 themselves. Knight d4 and queen c1 in case if they play bishop c4 or knight c4. Well, knight d4 does make sense. Knight h4, what's the purpose? Knight h4. If knight h4 with the idea of playing f4, that makes sense. But you can play knight d4 and f4 with your pawn after that. And that was the plan. So centralizing the knight, they decided to retreat in advance. f4 was played and then knight c5. The knight on c5 is better than on e5. It attacks the central pawn. And this is where, in my opinion, white made a mistake. They achieved something, but well, yes, when you play the attack, when you start the attack, you shouldn't lose temper. You should you should create threats and make forcing moves. That's why they played f5, which wasn't a good idea. Instead, they'd better defend on e4 and only then continue with f5. But okay, they played f5. Well, of course, after g takes f5, e takes f5, the bishop retreats, queen g5, the knight is lost. We don't need to analyze it. But the problem is that knight ce4 was possible. Knight c4, knight takes knight, knight takes here, queen f4, bishop takes f5, protecting here. So it makes sense to capture on f5, and queen f5. If we look at this position, we may realize that black has one extra pawn on d6. And white expect enough to play for a win. Why? What are these factors that tell us that their activity is not enough? Can you please answer this question yourself first, and then I will explain. So let me repeat the question. Why in this position the white activity is not enough and doesn't compensate the pawn? How do I realize it? So h8 is a dark square and we have a light square bishop. Well, but you can checkmate on h7. h7 is a light square and you have a light square bishop. So no, I don't think this is the answer. But it was a good try. Okay, let me try to explain it. Well, first of all, your explanation should be based on the variation. Definitely, black continues with d5. Why it's important? Because they control the center. They control the e4 square. So that means that the bishop is unable to join the attack, and the bishop on that flank doesn't make much sense. Just f6 can be played, for example. And well, what is a typical strategy for white's attack when the king is exposed? It's a rook lift. But this time, rook lift is not enough. For example, this move with rook g4, which is really dangerous, but the king is okay on h8. Moreover, there is this move. Rook g4, king h8, and what? The queen has to retreat, after which black is able to play f5 and defend the 7th rank, as well as support the center. So here, the center and enough room to maneuver the black pieces around the king in order to defend it. These are two factors that tell us that the white's attack is unlikely to succeed. Instead of rook f4, I can also play this move, then rook d6 with rook g6 to cover the king. Rook f4, rook g6, bishop takes. Well, it seems that they gain the pawn back, and maybe white is slightly better after they gain the pawn back. But black has this sneaky move, and after rook e5, white has to draw the game after queen f7. So here the queen is trapped. The queen has no square, so queen f7. Queen takes f7, rook f7. This is a check, and after king g6, black has a slightly better pawn structure, but it's approximately equal position. King f2 should be the next move to not let the rook enter the second rank. So getting the control over the center and having enough room to get pieces around the king and defend the king indicates us that sacrificing the pawn wasn't a good idea. And this is the case where a pawn, where white's pieces activity do not compensate the material advantage that black obtained. Well, in the game it was bishop c8, f takes g6, and white made a critical mistake. They played f takes g6, after which they lost the game on the next move. What do you think white should do? Oh, in two moves. Okay, yes. Sorry, but yes, I will answer your questions. Am I an instructor on Chesslands? Well, I'm a coach and a co-founder of TheChessWorld.com. So if you have any questions related to Chesslands, I will answer. There were some options about some questions about knight g3. Let me show you. So queen g4. Oh, no, not this position. Take this, that, this. Why not knight g3? Well, knight g3 here fails, of course, but d5 here, or maybe here. Here it also fails because of queen h7. So rook d6, rook f4. Well, this doesn't make sense. Yes, that's it. So no, it doesn't work. There is no variation. Okay. Here knight f5 and queen g5, which makes sense, but at the same time they take, you play queen g5, they move the king to f7, and how do you continue? It's not clear. Okay, so if any questions related to the chess world, well, you can message me at school@chesslands.com, and I will resend this message to the chess world staff. Okay, so d5, knight g3. Was knight g3 before d5. Okay, actually I think I did demonstrate it. Here this move fails because of this move. What then? Maybe we should play king f6. Queen f6, king g8, let's say. And I think this knight is too important. Then, for example, well, of course, it's possible instead to play queen g5, king goes to h8 and capture on g3. They take here, and this position seems to be quite rook to there with this idea, and this is a strong attack. So at least this works. But okay, let's follow the plan. F takes g6, and what is your solution? Rook takes f6. Yes, Paul, thank you. You are absolutely right here. Rook f6, well, Darius, queen g5 is not enough. Queen g5, they can defend with rook f8, for example. So rook f6, king takes, and queen h6, threatening with the mate here. Now rook f1 leads to a mate. For example, knight e4, check. Well, blocking doesn't make sense, rook f5 then. How to play? Well, king e5, it's still a mate. Queen f4, this. And finally b4 is a mate. What else? King e7, it's queen g7 mate. So that's the reason why after queen h6 they had to resign. What if they take with the h pawn? Does rook f6 work in this case or not? Let's decide. So for example, take, or definitely doesn't because king g7, and knight f5 doesn't work because bishop takes f5 and white is already down the exchange. So, but what about queen h6? No, queen g5, you mean sacrifice the queen or what? Yes, this time the king can hide on e7. So queen h6 is possible, but after king e7, the king escapes. And, well, there is some compensation, but white is definitely not better. However, instead of this queen h6 move, there was another way of white to convert their advantage. They could play this move. With the idea of knight, they play queen e7. Queen e7, then knight just takes on d6, and here the best option is to sacrifice the exchange, after which white is slightly better. Well, if not, knight e8 is a threat, so if, for example, they play somehow like that, then it's queen d4, which is quite dangerous, and queen e5 means queen e5, knight f7. Or queen e5 means this move, actually. I can show you this, and that. So the king has to move and the queen will be hanging. That's why after knight d6, black has to sacrifice the exchange back and white would be slightly better. So this attack worked, but actually it could fail in case if in this position black would continue with knight c4. Then the maximum that white could achieve was just a drawing rook endgame. So what you may remember from this exact example. Well, sometimes when you decide to sacrifice a pawn for a future attack in order to activate your pieces, you should make sure that your piece's activity is enough to compensate the pawn, and you have really some promising prospects with your pieces. Because in this variation, after d5, I don't going to move back, and black has enough room to maneuver their pieces and defend their king with the rooks, for example. So that's the reason. That's why after calculating this line, you can realize that there is no compensation for the pawn. That's why it didn't make sense to sacrifice the pawn. Okay. Well, the next example. It's white to move, and I think this example is obvious. Which move would you play here? What do you suggest? Okay, yeah, here the move, the answer is obvious. And this is the move that was played in the game. It's e6. e6 with the pawn. No, then, no, not knight f5. Just e6 and knight takes e6. So what's the point of knight f5? What did you achieve with this? So knight f5, he takes f5. And if you think you can do this move, I doubt. Why I doubt? Well, yes, e7 cannot be saved. Oh, wait. What are we talking about? It's just queen h4. So you cannot take advantage. Well, if you play maybe queen e3 move, that will help. But even if they just castle, are you sure that white is better in this position with the bishops of the opposite color? It's unlikely a better position. It's unlikely to be a better position. So, for example, I'm not sure, but I want to play this. This. Take. No, that doesn't work. Sorry. That doesn't work, so just bishop b5 and then rook e8 on the next move. So I don't really see any. Oh, actually, I do see some advantage. Then rook f7. Rook f7 is enough to defend. Perfect. Or maybe rook f7 even in this position and then bishop b5. Yeah, so there is no advantage for white. So knight e6 works. And in this position, white was originally one pawn down. And with knight e6, they attack on g7, so this move cannot be ignored. White cannot castle, so that's why they take. Rook takes, with the pressure there. How to play? In the game, it was king f7 played. Well, here, this is the case where black pieces look active. This queen is active, so this queen is dominating in the game. It controls a lot of squares, and we can say that the queen mobility is perfect here. The queen controls a lot of squares, but actually it's useless because the queen cannot coordinate with other pieces. Well, the maximum that they can do is this, but it's not enough. So, for example, if they take here right away, then I would say it's at least queen d5. But actually, there is a stronger move than queen d5. I'm not going to show you. I want you to find it after king f7. So with pieces, mobility is not enough to say that your pieces are active. You should also coordinate all of your pieces. And while this rook is not participating in the game, white has a chance to take advantage of their pieces activity. So what do you think? How to play? Okay, Paul suggests rook e7. Yes, it's rook e7. That's right. So it's rook e7, after which all these pieces start the attack of the enemy king. So queen g5. If, let's say, king goes to d6, you have a lot of options. And you even don't need to deliver an immediate check because white doesn't have a counterplay. So just queen g7. And after they play this move in order to bring the rook, rook b6, rook c6, and rook b7, threatening with several moves. For example, here you win after bishop g3. King goes to f6, another check, and in this position, queen g7, rook b6, and then you take the queen. So, for example, they block, you take the queen, and gain the queen. If they move to c5, you can still take the queen. So in the game, it was king e6 played, and it didn't really change much. Rook e3, king goes to d6. Queen e7 check, king goes to c6, rook e6 check, and this is where black resigned. Why? Well, it's easy. After that, it's just a checkmate in 2 moves. Can you please tell me which checkmate in 2 moves I'm talking about? Yes, thank you. It's rook a6, forcing them to take, and then queen b4 mate. Okay, by the way, if you like these videos, if you like these webinars and masterminds that I conduct, and you are watching it on YouTube, please don't forget to like and follow our channel. Okay, so here, well, e6 was the only way to activate white pieces, and white successfully took advantage of their activity. Now, another example that I would like to suggest, and this example, uh, well, if you look at the position, you will definitely say that black is completely winning. It's extra rook, a rook for 2 pawns. But what about pieces activity? And this king is actually trapped. Well, here it's rook e6 was played in the game. What do you think black should respond with? What comes to your mind? Rook a8. Okay. Well, rook e8. Well, it's a possible candidate move. What else to analyze? Bishop b6. Yeah, these are two moves. But rook e8 fails. Rook e8 fails because you can play rook e1 and create a double attack. So this gains the rook on e8, and you're also taking the bishop. Because if only you capture the bishop, you can simply draw the game with white. Because white has enough to compensate the rook. It's knight and 2 pawns. That's enough. Even knight and 1 pawn is enough in this endgame. So that's why rook e8 is a mistake. Bishop b6 was played. Rook e1, threatening with a mate. That's why bishop c5 to create an escape square for the king. Rook e6 again, well, hoping for repetition, but of course that wasn't the best idea. The idea of this move was to not allow them to take on b4, which this time leads to a checkmate. That's why it's rook e8, and white continued with g4. And this is where I want you to think and tell me which move black should play in order to win this endgame. So what comes to your mind? By the way, while you are thinking, I also wanted to inquire something. Well, what do you think if I will conduct such webinars? Well, maybe such a webinar will be once a week, but I am going to do some more activity. Like, for example, I'm going to play the games and comment them. I'm going to solve the puzzles and comment them. Are you interested in such a content? I mean, what if I just create a schedule, and if you like, you will attend it? I'm not going to send tons of emails and reminders, but what if let's say I conduct something 3 times a week, like one webinar like that, then maybe some games with analysis and some puzzles with analysis and explanation of how to solve them and how to learn by doing puzzles. Okay. So yes, John, rook h3 pinning the c3 pawn. That was very clever because you are going to take on b4. Well, and then, for example, the game could continue with knight e6, king b6, knight e5, a discovered attack, but king b7, and there are no more checks. The king escapes, the pawn falls, and black wins the game. However, in the game, black made a mistake. They continued with this move. Rook f6. Well, now rook takes g4 doesn't work. It's knight c6, king b6, and knight e5, which is a discovered attack and also attack of the rook. That's why black continued with rook b6 in order to use their other rook. g5. Well, and rook g8 was quite logical. This move would allow black to play for a win. It's knight d5 attacking the bishop. Bishop goes to d8, rook d6. And what's then? Rook d6 is played to stop rook g5 because then the bishop is hanging. And the bishop cannot take. If the bishop takes, it's just king a2, threatening with b4 and rook a6. Or b4 and knight b6. So rook h2 to stop the pawn. Knight c7 threatening with a mate. And rook h6. But rook h6 we play knight e6 and we are threatening with b4. So this is how we can, they move the rook back and we play knight c7 back, and this is a repetition. Of course, they don't need to take on g5 with the bishop or with the rook. They can just continue with this move. Then maybe g6 and rook g3. And then black is winning. So, but in the game, instead of playing rook g8, black continued with that move. However, this move, the idea was obvious. They just want to take on b4. For example, g6, bishop b4, and then rook takes on b4. Black is winning. But white found a better way of how to continue. What do you think? Which move white played here? White at least could draw the game. Rook h6, rook h6, I don't see the point. Rook takes h6, g takes h6, and then white loses the pawn and the game also. No, it's not rook h6. Okay, I'll show you. I'll show you. It's just knight c6 move. Knight c6, and then every time the king goes to the 6th rank, it's a discovered attack. King b6, for example, knight a5. Well, if black doesn't want a repetition, they can move the king back, but every time the king goes to the 7th rank, there is a check on f7. The king cannot go here. It can go back, but it's still this move. If the king goes to c8, it's repetition, and the king has to go to b7. Oh, wait, no, it's not. I just blundered the rook. If the king goes to c8, it's g6. And the rook is not able to go to g8. That's the reason. So king goes to a6 and then rook f6. And after that move, knight d7 and the bishop is lost. However, this is still a drawing position and the game ended in a draw. King d8, where it's possible to play king d8. King c8. Oh, wait. Knight c6. Well, king c7 doesn't work because of rook c6. So king b7 only is possible. And then check on f7. On knight b8 you can fork and capture the bishop. And when is a perpetual check? So I didn't get it. Knight c6, then rook. Well, knight c6, then king to. It is a perpetual check. Well, it is a perpetual check in case if king goes to a5 back. It is, right. But if the king goes to b7, then you have to check him from f7. No, well, here, this, where? Well, you have to check on f7. And after the king c8 move, what do you suggest? I suggested g6 with g7. It also stops rook g4. I don't think knight c6 works in this position. Definitely it doesn't. No, okay, I don't see the point of rook f1 at all. Maybe rook f8 you mean, but rook f8 is a blunder. There is a bishop on c5. Okay, fine. So, well, what you could learn from this webinar. So first of all, that pieces activity is not only the number of squares the queen can move. This is called mobility. And pieces activity also includes how your pieces can be coordinated, the ability to get pieces coordination. This is important. And these two factors together form pieces activity. And when you compare whether to have material advantage or to activate pieces, think about two things together: pieces mobility and pieces coordination, both these factors. Another thing is that when you decide to sacrifice the material in order to activate your pieces, always think about the future prospects of your pieces, how you initiate the attack, because don't get in such a situation like that when looks like the king is exposed and you can potentially try to checkmate, but in fact because of the control over the e4 square and the center and enough room to maneuver to the rooks to the king side, black is able to defend and ends up with extra pawn. In the best scenario, white draws the game with a nice combination. So if you sacrifice something, at least make sure that your activity is enough, or you get a draw in the worst scenario. Okay, fine. So what are we going to do then? Well, actually, that was all I wanted to show you today. And I want to remind you that if you want to schedule your free chess lesson on Chesslands, just go to the main page, click here, choose your coach, for example, International Master David Fitzsimons, choose the time slot that suits you well, then enter your name, your email, click proceed to payment. We do not charge anything, but we hold $2 on your card, which will be released in a few days. And if you're going to book a class, click book your lesson. That will be a 1-hour class, not free, a paid one. Then choose your coach. Let's say International Master Barliub Zlatanovic, and choose a time slot that suits you well. You can also choose your time zone. My time zone is Asia, Almaty, this one. And then this schedule is adapted to your time zone, so it's easy for you to pick up the day and the time slot that suits you well. Okay. Thank you for your attention, and your suggestions about the topics of our future webinars are welcomed. You can message me at school at chesslance.com, and don't forget that on the 11th of June we are going to conduct a tournament on chess.com with money prizes and with lessons as prizes as well. Thank you for coming, and see you next week, next Sunday.